you went through a divorce, and we've talked about that.
For nearly 3 decades, Dr. Doug Weiss and Lisa Weiss were seen as the epitome of a successful, loving marriage. Doug, a renowned marriage counselor and therapist, and Lisa, an accomplished writer and novelist, built a life together that many people admired. Doug's expertise in marriage and relationship counseling, particularly around sexual addiction and intimacy anorexia, helped countless couples rebuild their lives. Lisa, a sensitive and insightful writer, supported Doug's work while also pursuing her own creative endeavors. Together, they created a partnership that appeared to be both personal and professional, with their work and personal lives deeply intertwined. The End of a Marriage. Dr. Doug Weiss, Lisa Weiss, and the Complexities of Relationships. For nearly 3 decades, Dr. Doug Weiss and Lisa Weiss seemed like the perfect couple. Professionally accomplished, spiritually grounded, and publicly celebrated as a model Christian family. Doug, a renowned marriage counselor and the founder of the Heart-to-Heart Counseling Center, was the go-to expert for relationship advice. Lisa, an accomplished novelist, had her own successful career, contributing creativity and depth to their shared life. Their public persona was one of success, mutual respect, and unwavering faith. Yet, behind the smiles and well-crafted public image, the cracks in their marriage were beginning to form. The cracks appear: emotional disconnect. Despite the outward appearance of perfection, the Weiss's marriage began to deteriorate slowly and imperceptibly. Doug's career took off, and he became a widely recognized figure in the world of marriage counseling. As he worked to help countless couples mend their relationships, he struggled to maintain the emotional intimacy in his own marriage. For Lisa, this became increasingly painful. The man who once placed their relationship at the forefront of his life now seemed consumed by his professional obligations, leaving her feeling emotionally neglected and invisible. The emotional distance between them grew over time, with Doug's devotion to his career overshadowing their personal bond. Lisa, who had once been his equal partner in both life and work, found herself isolated. Doug's public persona as a marriage expert made it difficult for others to understand the growing divide between them. It was a gradual, insidious process. There were no loud arguments or dramatic moments. But the love and connection that once defined their marriage slowly withered away. A slowly disintegrating marriage. The more Doug became involved in his work, the more distant he became from Lisa. She began to feel that her emotional needs were no longer a priority, that his professional life had eclipsed their personal connection. As the years passed, she found herself alone in the relationship, grappling with the loneliness of being married to someone who could no longer see her emotional pain. The unspoken tension between them built up, and the marriage that once seemed unbreakable started to fracture. Despite her deep longing for the intimacy they once shared, Lisa remained committed to the marriage for as long as she could, trying to restore the bond between them. But it seemed that Doug had become blind to the emotional erosion occurring in their life together. The woman who had once been his partner, both in work and love, was no longer his confidant or priority. Over time, Lisa grew disillusioned, realizing that their marriage, once based on deep emotional intimacy, had been reduced to a mere formality. The divorce announcement, a shock to the public. In the end, it was not a sudden, dramatic decision, but rather a quiet and painful one. After 30 years of marriage, Doug made the decision to divorce Lisa. The announcement came as a shock to many, especially those who had viewed them as the epitome of a successful marriage. Doug, the relationship expert, the man who had counseled hundreds of couples through their struggles, was ending his own marriage. To the public, this seemed like a betrayal of his own principles, leaving many wondering how someone who had built a career on saving relationships could let his own fall apart. For Lisa, the pain was deep. She had stood by Doug for decades, supporting his career, managing their personal life, and sacrificing her own emotional needs for the sake of their family. And now, after all those years, she was left picking up the pieces of a broken marriage, watching Doug move on from their life together with little acknowledgement of the years they had spent building it. The public aspect of their relationship added another layer of difficulty for Lisa. She could not escape the constant scrutiny of their marriage's demise. The irony was not lost on their followers. Doug had spent years helping other couples solve their issues, yet he could not apply the same wisdom to his own marriage. It left many questioning if his career as a marriage counselor had clouded his judgment in his personal life. How could a man whose job was to heal marriages abandon his own? For Lisa, the divorce wasn't just a personal loss. It was a public one, amplified by the fact that the world had watched them as an example of what marriage should look like. The quick rebound. Doug's new marriage. Just months after the divorce, Doug announced his new marriage to Joni Lamb, a well-known figure in Christian broadcasting. Joni Lamb, co-founder of Daystar Television Network and widow of Marcus Lamb, had been a prominent figure in the Christian community. Marcus Lamb's sudden death in 2021 left Joni in mourning, and her relationship with Doug soon made headlines. Their marriage came as a shock to many, especially given the rapid pace with which it developed. For Lisa, the timing was particularly painful. Her ex-husband, whom she had been married to for 30 years, had moved on to someone else so quickly. It was a raw, public transition that left her heartbroken and confused. Was Doug emotionally ready for another relationship so soon after their divorce? Was this a rebound marriage, or was it a genuine connection that had blossomed unexpectedly? The speed with which Doug remarried left many with unanswered questions, especially considering the emotional aftermath of his previous marriage. Lisa had just spent decades building a life with Doug, and now she had to watch as he married someone else so soon. To her, it felt like their entire relationship was being erased, replaced by something new and public, something that had far-reaching implications in their shared community. It seemed as though the history they had together was being overshadowed by Doug's new relationship with Joni. Joni Lamb, the new partner. Joni Lamb, who had worked alongside Doug in the Christian media world, was no stranger to public attention. As co-founder of Daystar Television Network, Joni had helped build one of the largest Christian media empires in the world. Her role as the president and executive producer of Daystar, coupled with her long-standing involvement in Christian broadcasting, made her a familiar figure in the faith-based community. Her relationship with Doug raised eyebrows, especially considering the timing. Joni had just lost her husband, Marcus Lamb, and many wondered if she was emotionally prepared to enter a new relationship so quickly. Was her connection with Doug an act of healing, or was she seeking comfort in the arms of someone who shared her grief? Many saw their union as a new chapter in Joni's life, but for Lisa, it felt like a violation of the life they had shared. The pain of watching a marriage. And for Lisa, the pain was multifaceted. Not only had she lost her marriage, but she now had to witness Doug marry someone who was already well known in their shared community. The public nature of their relationship added layers of complexity to Lisa's heartbreak. It wasn't just that her marriage had ended. It was that her history with Doug had been so quickly and publicly replaced with a new narrative. In the eyes of many, Doug and Joni's marriage seemed to erase the decades she had spent with him. The rapid pace of Doug's remarriage left Lisa grappling with feelings of abandonment, not just by Doug, but by the public who had once seen them as a beacon of marital success. Doug's quick shift to a new wife seemed to invalidate the years of love, sacrifices, and hard work Lisa had invested into their relationship. For Lisa, it was as though the life they had built together had been disregarded in favor of a new relationship that was already being celebrated in the public eye. The emotional toll on Lisa's journey through this painful chapter was made even more difficult by the public nature of it all. As the world watched Doug's rapid transition into his new marriage, Lisa was left to pick up the pieces of her life in the shadows. She had once been an integral part of Doug's world, but now she was forced to navigate the wreckage of a broken marriage and a fractured identity. The emotional toll on Lisa was profound, as she had to come to terms with the reality that her life with Doug had come to an end, and the future she had once envisioned had been replaced by something she never anticipated. For Doug, the emotional implications of his decision were less clear. Whether his remarriage to Joni was an act of love or an attempt to move on too quickly, the fact remained that Lisa was left to cope with the aftermath of their broken marriage. The emotional distance between them had grown too wide to overcome, and despite their shared history, their paths had diverged irreparably. In the end, the story of Doug and Lisa's marriage is one of deep emotional complexity, one that exposes the fragility of relationships even when they appear to be strong on the outside. The public fallout from their divorce, Doug's remarriage, and Lisa's journey through heartbreak offers a cautionary tale about the personal cost of living under a public microscope and the harsh reality that even the most successful counselors are not immune to the emotional struggles that can tear apart a marriage. The public scrutiny and Lisa Weiss's decision to speak out. In the months following Doug and Joni Lamb's marriage, Lisa felt the full weight of public judgment. For years, she had silently endured the emotional toll of her marriage's breakdown without sharing the full story. But after seeing Doug move on so quickly, she could no longer stay silent. She needed to reclaim her voice and reveal her side of the story, not just for herself, but for others who might have experienced similar pain in their own relationships. In a candid interview, Lisa opened up about the years of emotional neglect she had endured during her marriage to Doug. She spoke about the deep sense of invisibility that had plagued her, how Doug's dedication to his career overshadowed their personal connection, and the gradual erosion of the intimacy they once shared. Lisa described the emotional distance that had formed between them, despite their best efforts to keep up appearances. Her decision to speak publicly was not born out of bitterness, but out of the need for closure and to reclaim control over her narrative. Her story struck a chord with many. It resonated deeply with people who had felt the same isolation in their own marriages. Lisa's brave decision to break her silence gave a voice to those who had silently suffered in relationships that had once seemed perfect on the surface. Through her vulnerability, she offered a rare glimpse into the complexities of marriage, particularly the challenges even those in the public eye face when their personal lives unravel. The aftermath. Moving forward from heartbreak. Lisa Weiss's journey in the aftermath of her divorce is a poignant reminder that even relationship experts are not immune to the same struggles they help others navigate. Doug Weiss, with his long career as a marriage counselor and his devotion to helping couples heal their relationships, could not save his own marriage. His quick remarriage to Joni Lamb raised questions, especially given his commitment to the values he had espoused for so long. Lisa's decision to speak out was not just an effort to share her side of the story, but also to move forward from the heartbreak. It was about finding peace and starting the healing process after the emotional wreckage of her marriage. For Lisa, speaking out allowed her to assert her agency in a world that had often made her feel unseen and unheard. While the pain of her divorce would linger, her voice became a powerful tool in her personal journey toward recovery. The story of Doug and Lisa's marriage, its rise, its gradual decay, and its ultimate collapse, serves as a reminder that even the most seemingly perfect relationships are susceptible to the ravages of time, neglect, and emotional distance. Healing, as Lisa's journey illustrates, is often a much more difficult and complex process than it appears from the outside. The quick transition, Doug's marriage to Joni Lamb. What followed Doug and Lisa's divorce shocked many. Doug remarried Joni Lamb just months after the split. The rapid transition from one marriage to another left the public stunned. For many, it felt as though Doug had already moved on before the divorce had even been finalized. The speed of his remarriage raised questions about the nature of his relationship with Joni, particularly given the emotional upheaval of his previous separation. Joni Lamb, a prominent figure in the Christian broadcasting community, had also experienced profound loss. Her husband, Marcus Lamb, the co-founder of Daystar Television Network, passed away in 2021. It was in the aftermath of Marcus's death that Joni and Doug's relationship blossomed. To some, it appeared that two people who had experienced similar grief had found solace in each other's company. But others questioned whether this was a rebound marriage or if their relationship had developed while Doug was still married to Lisa. The timing of Doug and Joni's relationship, coupled with the public nature of their positions, made it a subject of intense speculation. Was Doug already emotionally involved with Joni before his divorce from Lisa? Had the two been secretly dating during their respective marriages? These questions lingered in the air, creating a sense of intrigue and discomfort for those who had followed Doug's career and respected his work as a marriage expert. Lisa's pain and confusion, breaking her silence. For Lisa, the suddenness of Doug's remarriage was an overwhelming betrayal. After spending 3 decades with someone, she was now forced to watch him marry someone else, just months after their divorce. The emotional toll was immense, and in interviews, She opened up about the confusion and pain she felt when Doug remarried so quickly. "I did everything I could to save our marriage," Lisa admitted in one of her interviews, "and it really hurt me when he decided to separate from me. It hurt even more when he married Joni so soon after we separated. It made me ask myself a lot of questions. How could someone who had been married for so long get into another marriage so quickly? Was there something between them before the divorce?" These were not just the questions of a woman scorned, but of someone who had devoted her life to her marriage and now found herself reeling from its sudden collapse. The emotional devastation was compounded by the fact that she had to process her heartbreak in front of the public eye. Lisa's openness about her pain allowed people to see the human side of a woman who had once been seen as the supportive spouse behind a well-known relationship expert. Her candidness exposed the complexities of navigating a divorce after so many years together, especially when the emotional wounds are made public. Lisa spoke about the loneliness she felt as she tried to make sense of the swift transition from marriage to divorce to the reality of seeing Doug with someone else. She revealed that, for her, it felt as if the life they had built together had been erased in an instant, and she was left to pick up the pieces while under intense scrutiny. Doug's silence. Avoiding the questions. While Lisa was transparent about her feelings, Doug chose a different approach. Silence. Despite the public's curiosity about the reasons behind his divorce and the sudden nature of his remarriage, Doug rarely spoke about the breakdown of his marriage with Lisa. Instead, he focused on his new life with Joni, avoiding any meaningful discussion of the issues that had led to the end of his marriage. This silence frustrated many. Doug had spent years advising couples on how to communicate and resolve conflicts in their marriages, yet he refused to open up about the struggles that had ultimately led to his own divorce. His reluctance to share his side of the story raised further questions about his commitment to the values he had long espoused as a relationship counselor. Critics began to ask whether Doug had truly practiced what he preached. How could a man who had dedicated his career to helping others rebuild their relationships fail to do the same for his own? Doug's refusal to engage in the public conversation only deepened the mystery surrounding the collapse of his marriage and his subsequent remarriage. The involvement of Daystar Television, a network in crisis. As the drama surrounding Doug and Joni's marriage unfolded, it quickly became intertwined with the reputation of Daystar Television Network, the Christian broadcasting giant, co-founded by Joni and her late husband, Marcus Lamb. Daystar had long been known for promoting Christian family values, faith-based content, and messages about the sanctity of marriage. With Joni now remarried to Doug, questions arose about the network's credibility and its commitment to the principles it had once championed. The timing of Doug and Joni's marriage made it difficult for Daystar to maintain its image as a beacon of Christian family values. How could the network continue to promote messages about marriage and family unity when one of its key figures had remarried so quickly after the death of her husband? The growing skepticism about the network's authenticity was compounded by the personal drama unfolding at its helm. The firing of Jonathan Lamb. Daystar's internal struggles. As if the external controversies surrounding Daystar weren't enough, the network was rocked by an internal scandal. Joni made the shocking decision to fire her own son, Jonathan Lamb, from his position at the network. Jonathan had been a key figure at Daystar for years, both on-screen and behind the scenes. His sudden ousting left many viewers and insiders stunned. The timing of Jonathan's firing, amid the public scrutiny of Daystar's leadership, raised further questions. Was his firing connected to the family drama surrounding Doug and Joni's marriage? Had tensions within the Lamb family reached a breaking point? The decision sent shockwaves through the Christian community, and many began to question the stability of Daystar as a whole. The road ahead, a family and a network in crisis. As Lisa continued to share her story, the fallout from Doug, Joni, and Daystar's involvement in the controversy became more complex. The Lamb family's personal struggles were now inextricably linked to the network's image, leaving many to question the authenticity of the family values Daystar had long promoted. Lisa's journey of healing and rebuilding her life was just beginning, but the public spectacle surrounding Doug's remarriage and the struggles within Daystar made it difficult for anyone involved to move forward without scrutiny. For Doug and Joni, the road ahead was uncertain. Their relationship, now under a microscope, would continue to draw attention and raise questions. The challenges facing Daystar were not just about the network's leadership, but about the very principles it had once upheld. The rapid pace of change and the internal turmoil at Daystar left many wondering if the network would be able to weather the storm. As the story of Doug and Lisa Weiss, Joni Lamb, and Daystar Television Network continued to unfold, it became clear that the personal conflicts and public scrutiny would have lasting repercussions. For all involved, the next chapter would be crucial in determining how they could rebuild their lives, reputations, and the legacy of Daystar.